Rural BC, man. That's what...
Yes, exactly.
Thank you all for being here today. My name is Scott McInnes, and I'm the BC Conservative candidate for the riding of Columbia River-Revelstoke. I'm pleased today to be joined by my partner, Mr. Pete Davis, for the riding of Kootenay Rockies. For over 20 years, John Rustad has been fighting for what's right for us here in British Columbia. We're thrilled to have him in the Kootenays here today to make a significant announcement. As we move forward here today, it's a great pleasure of mine to have John in our hometown here of Kimberley and to make this announcement for all of you. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the next Premier of British Columbia and our leader at the Conservative Party of BC, Mr. John Rustad.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks very much, Scott, and it is a pleasure to be able to be here. And I tell you, we were just saying the Kootenays is beautiful, especially on a nice day like this. And I'm impartial. I'm partial, I guess you could say, because I love my own riding. But if I were not being in my riding, this is certainly one of the places I would consider being, because it is such a beautiful corner of our province. But the Kootenays also has a very long history, and that is a history in mining, which is what we're here to talk about today. When I think about the mining industry and the mining sector across British Columbia, there is so much potential, and that potential is being held back. What I mean by that is there is a process that this government has put in place that just takes forever to actually get something done. It makes it extremely difficult to actually get a mine open in this province. And just to give you an example, in Australia, it can take 2 to 3 years to be able to go through a permitting process. In Sweden, it can take 2 years. In Chile, it can take 5 years. And yet here in British Columbia, it can take 12 to 15 years to get through a process to be able to do a mine. That to me is unacceptable. As a province and as a world, we need resources. We need the copper, we need the critical minerals for everything that we'd like to do. Not to mention, we need the jobs. We need to be able to support the workers and the families and the communities that mining supports right across this province. British Columbia today has about 35,000 people working in the mining sector. It is also the sector that hires the most Indigenous people anywhere in our province. It is one of the safest, if not the safest, heavy industry that the province has. And this is why we want to see mining to be able to succeed in British Columbia. This is why we want to be able to see the success of mining. There are today currently 16 or 17 mines that are prepared to go ahead. They're either close to be permitted or about to be permitted. Those represent creating between 20 and 30,000 jobs and a $38 billion investment. But more importantly, by getting these mines open, it would generate annually about $22 billion in wages and benefits, and it would generate close to $11 billion annually in revenue for the government. We are currently running a $9 billion deficit, and I suspect strongly that'll grow to be 10 and 12 billion through the fiscal mismanagement and the weak leadership of David Eby. We need to get these mines open. We need the revenue. We need to be able to make sure that we can pay for additional tax relief. We need to make sure we can pay for things like healthcare improvements and how we're going to tackle crime and addictions and build that out. But we need the revenues. And that means we have to be laser focused on getting mining opening in this province. It has such a huge potential. We have a long history in BC. It's a natural fit, and it's just the right thing to be able to do for British Columbia. And as the Conservative Party, that's what we stand for. Just standing for what's right and getting people to work. And so some of the things that we're going to be talking about and that we're talking here is going to a single project, a single permit process. Let's get rid of this layers of bureaucracy and process that we have. We're going to make sure we maintain those high environmental standards that we have, but we're going to strip away all of that bureaucracy and process and get to a place where we can get mines approved and get the permitting done in a very short period of time. Part of that, of course, is going through the regulatory overreach, making sure that a lot of that process and duplication is done. We are also going to make sure that we do strategic investments in strategic infrastructure, whether that is power generation, whether that's road access, whether that's other types of structure that's needed in British Columbia to be able to support a healthy mining sector. And of course, as part of being the Minister for Aboriginal Relations and Reconciliation back in the day, I signed many mining agreements with First Nations, First Nations that want to take full advantage of those economic opportunities, which is why we're also focused on what we call economic reconciliation. We want to make sure that our First Nations are full partners and having that opportunity to be able to benefit, creating the jobs and supporting their communities so that Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike in this province can prosper from the potential that mining can bring. So on top of streamlining that permitting process that we just talked about and going through there, the regulatory burdens, we're also going to make sure that we have those high environmental standards for cleanup after a project is done. And we have a policy basically as you build it, you clean it. We're going to make sure that we have the standards in place and the revenue set aside in the bonds so that when we get to shutting down a mine, the reclamation work will be paid for. It'll be funding will have been in place so that we can make sure that those mines are cleaned up and we don't leave anything behind that would create any sort of problems for a future generation. Critical minerals, of course, is an important piece to think about in British Columbia. And the NDP will stand up and say, oh, we put in place a critical mineral strategy. No, all they've done is they've created a plan to create a critical mineral strategy, which then will develop a plan which will eventually get to a mine should there be approval with the First Nation. That 12 to 15-year process is too long. We cannot wait that long. So part of our critical mineral strategy is going to be making sure that we are leaders in extraction and making sure those minerals are available. But we're also going to look for every opportunity possible to be able to add value to those minerals. We want to make sure that if there's opportunities to be able to do additional smelting, or other types of activities to have more finalized products leaving this province, we want to do everything we can to create the environment in BC so that we can see that kind of investment, so that we can see those jobs created and see that value being added right here in British Columbia. Big piece of that, of course, is creating a competitive tax environment. Like everything in British Columbia, it's incredibly difficult to actually get anything done in British Columbia, just from a cost perspective. For many things, whether it's agriculture or forestry, we are the highest cost producers anywhere in North America, and mining is very similar. It's also why we want to get rid of the carbon tax and the low carbon fuel emission standards. Mining does need our hydrocarbons in terms of being able to move things around, so those costs need to come down, and getting rid of those two things alone will drop the cost of fuels by up to 36% or 36 cents per litre. It's a huge savings and helps to make our whole industry much more competitive, makes, of course, life much more affordable for people across this province. So mining, in my opinion, has a great future in British Columbia. As a government, we are going to champion mining. We're going to make sure that the opportunity is there to be able to build these mines, to be able to provide the resources we need, to be able to provide those good paying jobs in British Columbia, to create that revenue stream for this province, and quite frankly, to get British Columbia back at work. Today, just think about this. 1 in 3 people in this province are thinking about leaving BC. 1 in 2 youth are thinking about leaving this province. This is about creating those opportunities in British Columbia for people to have those good paying jobs, those family supporting jobs, to being able to stay here in British Columbia, and at the same time giving the province the revenues it needs to be able to get back to balanced budgets and be able to make those strategic investments that are needed. So thank you very much for coming out today, and I look forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. We're going to start off with live questions. So if you have a live question, please go to the queue. Riley with Vista.
Hi. So I was just kind of wondering on a tangible level with